Shavua Tov, welcome back to this week's weekly mitzvah. There's a vague remez, hint, in this week's parasha to the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, of visiting the sick. So I just wanted to run through some of the laws regarding visiting the sick, because this is something that we often do, and unfortunately, from what I've seen, we don't always get it right. The goal of visiting the sick is not to alleviate the guilt that people will be upset if I don't visit the sick. That's what we do. Is like, I have to go visit so-and-so. Why? Because if I don't go visit so-and-so, they'll be fruitable with me. The goal of visiting the sick is to be able to help the sick. So you've got to go visit them, and you've got to help them. You need to bring something. Now, bringing flowers, unless it's really going to cheer them up, serves no real purpose. But bringing a meal, helping the family out at home, maybe there are people at home, or if the person's in hospital, or they need something. Maybe you get there, they need somebody to pick up their mail, they need somebody to do various chores for them. That is part and parcel of the mitzvah. You've got to go there and say, what can I do? Can I help you out with something? Can I cook your meal? Whatever the case might be. That's number one. Number two is you've got to daven for them. And the question of where exactly they are, especially if they're in a hospital, you've got to daven. The best place to daven for them is at their bedside. So it's often people don't feel that comfortable with it. But the Talmud teaches us that when somebody is sick, that the Shekhinah, the divine presence, hovers over their bed. So it's enough that, so to speak, Hashem is literally there with you. So just stand up and say, we hope Hashem gives you a speedy recovery. But you have to daven for them. You've got to help them, and you've got to daven for them. Now, how sick does somebody have to be before you need to go visit them? Generally speaking, if somebody's got a common cold, they've got a bit of flu, they're a little bit bedridden, you don't have to visit them unless it's been 3 consecutive days of illness. So often when you have kids at school, if the kid doesn't come to school one day, your kids don't have to go pay a Bikur Cholim visit. But if 3 consecutive days the child or the individual isn't well, then there's definitely some merit in going to visit. There's an interesting halacha question that's asked, can you fulfill the mitzvah of visiting the sick over the phone? I asked the same thing about Menachem Avo, about consoling the mourners. Can you do it over the phone? So the answer is yes and no. Yes, it can be when there are no other alternatives. So if you are overseas, and or somebody overseas is ill, well, Tachlis is you're not going to be able to go visit them. So how do you fulfill the mitzvah of visiting the sick? So you've got to do it over the phone. But if somebody is at the sand, someone's around the corner at the hospital, and really just, you're going to have to, it's inconvenient to visit them, you cannot fulfill the mitzvah over the phone. You have to go there and do it in person. The same would go with regards to email and every other form of communication outside of interpersonal. There's one exception about visiting the sick that you are exempt, and that's if you have an enemy. We don't like to have enemies. Just make it clear that there's a Torah prohibition of having enemies. But let's just say you have one. Halachically, if the enemy dies, you are allowed to attend the funeral. Because we say that everybody's going to die. Nobody's exempt from dying in this world. Everyone's going to die. So when you go, it's not going to be as if you're gloating. But visiting the sick is different. That if by visiting the sick, it's almost going to be saying, I'm coming. And even if your motivation is positive, that you're there just to really wish them well, nevertheless, you shouldn't do it. Because it gives it an aura of arrogance and very problem. That's the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim. Look forward to seeing you next week on the weekly mitzvah. All the best.